Hey guys, it's been a while. I'm MrRAYtheteacher. Here we go. My bread and butter, my home field, economics. So get ready to learn something useful. There is my social media, so check it out. Don't forget to subscribe. Much appreciated. So, economics, economos, coming from Greek, I'm pretty sure. So, the topic is supply and demand. The concept is movements along and shifts of. So basically optimal bang for buck for both producer and consumers. So first, a quick rundown. A supply graph shows the phenomena that if a good can sell for a higher price, then producers will make more of it to increase their revenue. This in short explains why these graphs generally slope upwards. So a demand graph illustrates the fact that consumers value utility and love getting bang for their buck. That means the higher the price of a good, the less consumers will demand of it. This is why these graphs generally slope downwards. An exception to the rule would be sometimes luxury goods. So in where something too cheap would be suspicious. People might flock away for something more subtle. And this is because with these graphs, we all have to make choices with our money and would not like to waste it away. These two forces are at play with each other, gradually going towards the middle. So supply and demand graphs can be used to show us how much of a good quantity is demanded and supplied, thus sold, at a particular price. An equilibrium is when sweet spot is met and there's maximum efficiency, so producers get the highest price and consumers get the lowest price. So if the price got any higher, consumers would go elsewhere. But if the price got any lower, that wouldn't make good business sense. And this might be confusing when you hear words like shift, change, increase, decrease, etc. But as a rule of thumb, the word along is a safe bet that you don't draw another curve, and a shift indicates that you draw a new line. And more than a rule of thumb, that's pretty much the rule of thumb. So x-axis and y-axis, here's a quick way to remember. X is across, it goes across. Y, if you draw your y like that, see that line goes down, the vertical line, vertical axis. Don't mix them up. So y-axis goes up and down, x is across, so that's why it goes across. So price is on your y-axis, quantity on your x-axis. Here's a simple way to remember. In a left-right direction, demand goes down. And when you're drawing your supply curve, supply goes up. I'm just doing it in blue and red for color coding, just to make it easier for you to understand. You will probably be doing it all in the same color pen. So equilibrium's in the middle. See how everything's going towards the middle, my green dot. And that's where the supply and demand curves intersect. So there you go, they cross each other. And you'll be paying it at that given price, which is P, and you will be getting that given quantity, or demanding that given quantity, or supplying that given quantity, quantity Q at the bottom. So P is here for price, Q here for quantity. And that is at equilibrium. You can sell at different price points or supply at different price points and that, but yeah, that wouldn't be equilibrium. This purple box is price times quantity. So it's basically like a square, you know? So you have this times that. So the area of a square, rectangle, quadrilateral shape. That signifies your revenue, your money coming in or generated for the business. And quantity supplied and demand, and an increase or decrease in supply and demand are not the same. And if that's the only thing you take away today, that's pretty much it. It is mucho importante. So movement along the supply curve, and that's caused by changes in price. So there's your zero, your x and y axis. So there's supply. Now you do not draw a new curve. you are simply moving along the same curve from one point to another. Remember, supply itself is not changing. Only the price and quantity supplied is changing. Remember, we haven't drawn a new graph. The supply curve shows price at a given price, a certain quantity will be supplied, thus also showing revenue. So at that price, this quantity will be demanded. And that purple box is how much you make. And as the price gets higher, the incentive to make a good increases because you can make more money. Remember, if you're running a business, more likely than not, you are not a charity. You're a business. And if you're too charitable, you'll go broke. And if you go broke, not good. Bankruptcy, potentially. Now, other way around, cheaper price, cheaper quantity. Just compare this box with that box. The darker box here, hopefully the transparency effects show well, versus the lighter shaded mauve. That's a technical word for purple, shade of purple. Lighter mauve box there. So difference in boxes shows different revenue. Which one makes more money? Which one sells more? Pretty easy. So now moving on to shift of the supply curve, and there's various factors that can contribute this. So input prices. So maybe your fish and potatoes for your fish and chips cost more. Competition and rivals. So maybe there's a burger shop down the road. Technology, so it's capital. Maybe you've got robots to make burgers cheaper because they don't go on strike, they don't take sick days, they are at our beckon and command until they take over. Future expectations, so maybe you become rich, so technology, burger, bot is the way of the future. And of course, environment and weather, so the climate, so basically like if the fish end up getting all their habitats polluted. Learn about that in geography, what happens there when you mess up the waterways. So in this case, you draw a new supply curve and label it appropriately. So also, to avoid confusing yourself, it could be easier to think of moving the curves left for a decrease and right for an increase, as opposed to thinking of the terms of up and down. And you'll see why very, very soon. So remember, supply goes up, S1. Now here we go. Look at that arrow. It has moved right. Did you see that? It has moved right for an increase in supply. So I'll put that as S2. And if you're going to decrease, it moves left. That's S3. And there is our demand curve going down. Equilibrium at S1. D1 is equilibrium price there. And the next one would be at equilibrium at supply increased. I've just written at that. You would normally have to write at E2. I've just done this so it's easy to explain. Be the price point here at price with supply increased, and quantity the quantity supplied increased. And let's move it back to here. Price when supply is decreased with the equality, the equilibrium there, and the quantity there. So again, look at that revenue box versus the price, the supply increased versus the supply decreased. Which one makes you more money? So compare the shape sizes. Again, I'm just drawing straight lines here. Usually these might even be curved. And by might, I mean most likely be curved. It's just for simplicity's sake. And think about equilibrium. The new quantity supplied and the price. Demand itself does not increase. Just the quantity demanded. Don't mix that up. So moving along, get it? The pun? Movement along. Anyway, we have fun here. So moving along, the movement along the demand curve is caused by changes in price. So here we go, drawing it with the price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis, in a left-right direction. Demand goes down. Now, you don't have to draw a new curve. In fact, you do not draw a new curve. You're merely moving along the same curve from one point to another. Now remember that demand itself is not changing. Only the price and the quantity demanded is changing. Remember, we haven't drawn a new graph. So the demand curve shows that at any given price, a certain quantity will be demanded, thus also showing revenue. That would come in there. So P times Q. I've explained that before. If not, check out my other videos that explain it. And also, as the price gets lower, the incentive to buy given good or demanded service increases because you get more value and utility. That is, more bang for your buck. Here's the proof. So here's the more expensive price. So, and there's the more expensive quantity demanded. And then when you multiply it across, that's what you get. So see more expensive quantity. And yeah, just look at the sizes in boxes. Look how they're different. That shows different revenue. Which one makes more money? Which one sells more quantity? Profits aside, ask yourselves, talk amongst yourselves if you need be. So that's usually a common exam question. Let's move on. Shift of the demand curve. So this is caused by other factors, including income changes. So this is Bob, yours truly, becomes rich. Look at that. Look at that swag. Look at that flex. Trends and fads. So maybe he likes this particular brand, which is a bit cheaper. Maybe like the richer people fads have taste for the finer things. So changes in taste. So if you look really closely, it says for educational purposes only. The price of relative goods, so substitutes and complementary goods. So for example, here you go. Are you going to get the cheaper shoes, the more expensive shoes? Maybe your socks, maybe some shoe cleaner and some water repellent. And future expectations. Ooh, I got an idea. And of course, the environment, Mother Earth. In this case, you do draw a new demand curve and label it appropriately. And same thing, it's easier to think of moving the curves left and right as opposed to thinking of terms up and down, just so that you don't get confused. So price, quantity, demand goes down. D1, demand increased price, demand increased, demand decreased. And there's a supply curve going up. So the initial equilibrium will be here. That's where we start off with. When demand's increased, that's our new equilibrium there. And when it is decreased, that's our new equilibrium down here towards the left corner, bottom left corner. So that's your initial revenue coming. Look at that purple box. Let's compare it to this one, relatively smaller. And then the next one, relatively bigger. So think about equilibrium, the new quantity demanded and the price. Supply itself does not increase. And your 4 basic laws of supply and demand in summary: if demand increases but supply remains the same, then there is a higher equilibrium price and a higher quantity demanded, along with my higher voice that just kind of cracked there, sorry. If demand decreases but supply remains the same, then there is a lower equilibrium price and a lower quantity demanded. Flipping that around, if the supply increases but demand remains the same, then there is a lower equilibrium price but higher quantity demanded. But if supply decreases but demand remains the same, then there's a higher equilibrium price and a lower quantity demanded. Why? Quiz yourself, draw them out, try and work it out. Think of some examples. So what did you learn today? In summary, if that's what someone asks you, please don't waste the taxpayer dollar. Here's a good answer. Movements along and shifts of supply and demand curves. A movement along the supply or demand curve is when you move along the curve. Only changes in price cause movement along the curve. A shift of supply or demand curve is when you need to draw a new curve, and factors other than changes in price cause this, including future expectations, price of relative goods, etc. And a movement along the supply-demand curve and a shift in supply and demand are not the same thing. And an increase in supply and demand and an increase in the quantity supplied and demanded are not the same thing. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe and check out my other videos if this helped you out. Spread the word to your classmates, friends, and colleagues. Check out my Patreon. Feel free to support me if this video helps you out. And watching the ads also helps too, please. Thanks a lot. And special thanks and shout out to the following people. So Pam, co-worker, fellow teacher I work with, always being helpful. And Yui, who requested this video. So she's studying account. Good luck with that. I'll leave you to it and I'll catch you out on the flip side, guys. Study hard for a bright future. Ciao.